Donald Trump seems pretty panicky about that criminal investigation in Georgia! The ex-president spent the weekend lashing out at the prosecutor, who is said to have pretty good evidence of criminal intent. Donald Trump has a long, robust history of getting away with every shady, underhanded, wildly unethical, likely criminal thing he's ever done in his life. Whether it's stiffing contractors he owes money to, paying a porn star to keep quiet about their alleged affair, or inciting a violent riot in a botched attempt to overturn the results of an election he lost, the comeuppance that would befall other people never seems to comfort. But according to a former federal prosecutor, the guy's luck may be running out thanks to the state of Georgia. Over the weekend, Joyce Vance, a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, told MSNBC that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, who impaneled a special grand jury earlier this year, has wildly damning evidence on her hands re Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 in order to indict the former president. Vance told Katie Fung, Willis needs proof of the former president's state of mind, and, according to the ex-prosecutor, Willis may have it thanks to the recording of the phone call that took place on January 2, 2021, ahead of the official vote certification, in which Trump ordered Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find him the exact number of votes necessary to win the state, despite the "I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state," Trump told Raffensperger, before threatening to prosecute the local official for failing to follow that the then president was not asking not for an investigation into potential voting fraud, not for a look to see whether something went wrong, but he's asking Raffensperger to find him the specific number of votes that he needs. Vance told Fung is pretty good evidence of criminal intent walking. As HuffPost notes, while Willis's probe was initially launched in response to that very damning call, the investigation has now been expanded to include possible racketeering and fraud linked to a number of efforts by Republicans to upend the election. Raffensperger, who won his primary last week, is scheduled to testify before the grand jury on Thursday. An analysis by the Brookings Institution released last year, which the Fulton County DA's office has studied, concluded that Trump's actions in Georgia put him at substantial risk of possible state charges predicated on multiple crimes, including criminal solicitation to commit election fraud, intentional interference with performance of election duties, conspiracy to commit election fraud, criminal solicitation, and state re. In an interview with the New York Times, Willis said, "Anything that is relevant to attempts to interfere with the Georgia election will be subject to review. An investigation is like an onion. You never know. You pull something back, and then you find something else." Is Trump actually in legal peril? If his history is anything to go by, it's hard to say yes, overwhelming evidence notwithstanding. But he sure seems upset about Willis's work, having bleated on Truth Social over the weekend. The young, ambitious, radical left Democrat prosecutor from Georgia, who is presiding over one of the most crime-ridden and corrupt places in the USA, Fulton County, has put together a grand jury to investigate an absolutely perfect phone call to the many lawyers, from both sides, were knowingly on the call. "I also assumed it was taped. I called to fight a rigged and stolen election, and they go after me instead of the people that rigged and stole it. God bless America." At a rally in Texas in January, Trump similarly attacked Willis, along with two other black prosecutors, without mentioning any of the investigators by name, telling his supporters the Fulton County, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg are vicious, horrible people, and claiming they're racists and they're very sick, they're mentally. Then he encouraged his followers to launch the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta, and elsewhere, if these radical racist vicious prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal. a demand former prosecutors believe could backfire legally on him given it sounds a lot like an attempt to obstruct justice. In other Trump legal news, New York AG Letitia James, who last week scored a victory when an appeals court ruled Trump, Ivanka, and Don Jr. must sit for under oath depositions, is reportedly looking to expunge the Trump Organization from the face of the earth. For Insider: James would do so through a massive lawsuit seeking New York's so-called corporate death penalty, as she has signaled over the past 5 months in legal filings alleging repeated and persistent fraud at Trump's business. Section 6312 of the executive law begins with these words: "Whenever any person shall engage in repeated fraudulent or illegal acts or otherwise demonstrate persistent fraud or illegality in the carrying on, conducting or transaction of business." The words persistent and repeated pop up frequency in the hundreds of pages of court documents filed this year by the Attorney General, describing the alleged pattern of misstatement in Donald Trump. In those instances of persistent fraud, executive law authorizes the Attorney General to begin a civil investigation, complete with subpoena power, and allows the official to seek fines, damages, and a state judge's order enjoining, or halting, such fraudulent acts, and where appropriate, the state attorney general can seek a judge's order dissolving the business, the so-called corporate death penalty. Clearly the attorney general is gearing up for something substantial here, Norman Eisen, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, told Insider. And her determination that she's shown, her doggedness, just the sheer amount of litigation that she's devoted to this, I think puts her in a very different category from her colleague Alvin Bragg, who cut and run despite his own lead prosecutors determining that there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt, Eisen said, referring that in 2018, Trump's charity, the Donald J. Trump Foundation, agreed to shut down after James's predecessor, Barbara Underwood, filed a lawsuit accusing it of functioning as little more than a checkbook to serve Trump's business and political interests, and of engaging in a shocking pattern of illegality. Trump was later forced to pay $2 million to 8 of the charities he swindled and admit he used his charity in extremely uncharitable ways. The settlement also required Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump to undergo mandatory training how not to run a scam foundation, which was truly just the chef's kiss moment of the whole thing. Representative Mo Brooks says he doesn't support Second Amendment restrictions because people need them to take back the government. To be fair, this take from Brooks should come as absolutely no surprise given his robust support of the insurrection that took place on January 6, 2021.